Okay, so we're going to get finished with the biology review with talking about cells and what they're made of and what they're part to do, just like we talked about in biology. Then we're also going to talk about how you get from being one fertilized egg to trillions of cells like you are now through mitosis. And then we're also going to talk about movement of particles in and out of the cell, which is osmosis and diffusion. So I'm just going to go through these pretty quickly. You can pause me and write as you need to. But with cells, remember that in here we're just going to be talking about the humans. So the human cells are eukaryotic. If you'll remember, eu means true and karyon means nucleus. So they all have nuclei, at least one. Some muscle cells have multiple nuclei that have your entire genome, your complete genome in every one of those cells. So any one of those could replicate and have all of your genes in them. And that human cells are also animal cells, which means there is no cell wall, there are no large vacuoles storing water or anything like that. There are no chloroplasts because we do not make our own food. And they do have centrioles, which we'll look at in mitosis and meiosis, or I'm sorry, we'll talk about in mitosis. We'll talk about meiosis when we talk about the reproductive systems. So the organelles that I want you to be reminded of and that I will test you over in here are just a few of them. So the mitochondria, if you'll remember, we talked about the mitochondria with cellular respiration, which is where we take that glucose that we eat and we break it down and make ATP for the cells, which ATP is cellular energy. And then the nucleus, which we'll look at well, actually we won't look at it. We're going to get rid of it so that we can replicate cells. But the nucleus job is to be like the skull. It's protecting and housing the DNA, which is the part of the cell that, organizes and kind of gives the instructions for all of the cell activities. But the DNA in every single cell, whether the genes are expressed or not, you have all of your DNA in every single cell. Different cells express different parts of the genome. And then one other thing that we didn't talk about in biology is that inside the nucleus is where ribosomes are created, because ribosomes are just wadded up parts of rRNA. So that is where those are created. Then the Golgi apparatus is the Golgi apparatus packages proteins to be removed from the cell. So the ribosomes create the proteins, and it's actually the ribosomes that are stuck to the rough ER are going to read the mRNA and create proteins, just that primary structure that we talked about in the last section, biochemistry. And then the Golgi apparatus is responsible for packaging those and removing them out of the cell through the cell membrane. And then back to the endoplasmic reticulum, we do have two types, rough and smooth. Rough has ribosomes stuck all over it. Let me scoot this down a little bit. Rough has ribosomes stuck all over it, and it is the site of protein synthesis. And then the smooth is, it doesn't have any ribosomes, and it is to make cell membranes and stuff like that. And then the cell membrane can also be called the plasma membrane, and it is what allows things in and out of the cell, whether the Golgi apparatus is, binding to it to get rid of something, or there's a vesicle coming in, whatever. It maintains homeostasis. So same as before, keeps the cell happy and gives it what it needs, it gets rid of its waste. And then, speaking of getting rid of waste, lysosome, if you remember, lyse means to cut. So the lysosome cuts up or breaks down cellular waste. So just think of Lysol. Just think, breaking down the dirt or whatever. So lysosome. And then centrioles we will talk about with mitosis. And centrioles are where those spindle fibers are pushed. They kind of come out of the centrioles, and they help to divide the chromosomes in mitosis and meiosis. So mitosis is what we're going to talk about in this section, and it's where you get two identical cells, and that's for growing and healing and replacing dying cells. And then meiosis is making sex cells, and we'll talk about that in detail when we get to the reproductive systems. I'm making this during my anatomy class, so you might hear me talk to them a little bit. I don't know. Y'all hang on that thought just a minute. Now you have this page, and this is talking about, what are cells. So you started off as a fertilized egg. For about 30 minutes, you were one cell, and then that cell split. And as those cells split, they could take different forms. And as you are reproduced, those cells are reproduced, and you get further and further in your development, they start to differentiate and specialize. So cells can specialize, or they can just replicate into what they already were. So stem cells, which are cells that are in the umbilical cord. So if you will look up some stem cell research, you can see that stem cell research is a really big deal right now. People are trying to take stem cells and recreate, or they do take stem cells and recreate like a brand new heart from them, or kidneys or whatever, and so that people who had these stored, which you can do from your babies, people who have them stored, if their baby later in life needed something, they could actually get their own cells and create those organs, so it's a better chance of them not having their body reject those. Or it could specialize, and this is how you turned into, from one fertilized egg that was general and had all your genome, into like hundreds of different types of cells that are specialized. So this is nervous tissue or nervous cell. I don't know what those are supposed to be. These are smooth muscle. These are red blood cells. And then we're going to label this down here, but this is stratified cuboidal. So they go into all these different types. This is adipose, which is fat. They go into all these different types of cells, and therefore you're made of all these tissues that have all these hundreds of different types of cells, or thousands of different types of cells that came from just one general cell. So down here is just another picture of kind of that same thing. You've got the brain, which is one organ, and it's made of different types of neural cells or nervous cells that build up all the different tissues of the brain. The heart, the main tissue of that would be the cardiac muscle, which looks different from smooth muscle, which looks different from skeletal muscle. And then inside your bones, some people don't know that, but inside your bone you have bone marrow, which makes your red blood cells. So your bones make your blood. And so all those different cells come from different tissues, or they build up different tissues. Okay, and then the bottom, I will test you on these. You do need to know that pseudo means false, simple means one, and then stratified means layered. So simple squamous these are types of epithelial cells, which epithelial cells are just cells that are in like the outside area of something, or the lining, I guess you could say. So simple squamous are flattened cells, and simple means that there's only one layer of those. So these are one layer of flattened cells. And then stratified squamous, this is like your skin. So at the bottom, stratified means layered. So at the bottom you've got these plump, cells, and as you get closer to the top, they flatten out and they actually die. And so when you touch your skin, you're touching the dead layer. And down here, this is why we get, we peel and we get rid of skin cells all the time. And as you just, brush your hand or whatever, you're getting rid of skin cells. You're getting rid of these. And these will just keep pushing up, and then you'll just replace those. As these replicate, these just come up to the top. Okay, so simple cuboidal, they're just cubes, cube-shaped cells, all with their nuclei. And then stratified cuboidal just means layers of that shaped cell. I'm not going to worry about transitional, so you can scratch that one out. But then simple columnar, so you've got column-shaped cells. A lot of times these will have cilia on them, so, a lot of times you'll see these with like the little hair-like structures, if you'll remember that. So sometimes they're ciliated. These will line the inside of your intestines. These cilia help to increase the surface area of that cell. And then pseudo-stratified columnar. So pseudo means false, so this is falsely stratified, which means that these look like they're layered, but they're not really. They all reach the bottom, unlike here where only these are on the basal membrane or whatever. These all reach the bottom, but they look like they're layered. So falsely layered columnar is pseudo-stratified columnar. Okay, so in the next video we're going to talk about mitosis and review all the parts of that.